So why is it that a powerful state like Israel is so worked up about a 17-year-old? Their worry is not unfounded. It is individuals like Ahid Tamimi who trigger revolutions. History, even recent events, have proved that the young and fearless pose the biggest challenge to authority and often force change. From Hong Kong to Florida, Pakistan to Palestine, young men and women have brought governments on their knees, and the youth become catalysts for change and mobilize movements much bigger than they ever envisioned. Our next report explores such cases.
To every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you.
Emma Gonzalez was a high school student when a shooter opened fire at her school. The shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School had led to a mass movement against gun control in America.
Yes, we do. I have a dream that enough is enough. And that this should be a gun-free world, period.
Emma and her friends were instrumental in putting together this massive rally in Washington, D.C. More than 1 million people gathered across America to march for better gun laws. It was perhaps the largest gun control protest in a generation.
Called out Congress and told them that this is.
Emma and her friends have become icons for their efforts.
To anything without the support of you guys.
They made their voices heard in the face of resistance. Bouazizi was another such youth icon. He was 27 when he set himself on fire in front of government offices in Tunisia's Sidi Bouzid town. Mohamed Bouazizi was harassed and slapped by a state official when he was trying to make his living in the local market. Bouazizi's actions sparked the Tunisian revolution and the wider Arab Spring against autocratic regimes in West Asia. His case highlighted the state of several young men who had an education but could not find any work for themselves. Mohamed Bouazizi's death forced President Ben Ali to step down after 23 years in power. In China, 20-year-old Joshua Wong is challenging the mighty and powerful Xi Jinping regime. He gained worldwide recognition for playing a prominent role in the 2014 umbrella movement. As a teenager, Wong has a major influence in Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. Since gaining prominence, the Chinese government has tried to muzzle his voice. Joshua Wong and 2 other pro-democracy activists were jailed first in 2014. 4 years later, Wong was jailed once again in January 2018 for failing to comply with a court order. Bureau Report, WION.
Still ahead on the show, the debate over illegal immigrants Reaches India now. Politics over a citizenship register that excludes Assam's illegal immigrants. We bring you the facts and the global parallels. On Gravitas Frontline, showcasing the American Chinook helicopter that will add muscle to the Indian forces. Zimbabwe's first election after Mugabe is underway. Who has the edge and why is the ex-president supporting the opposition candidate? And just what is the Kiki challenge? Why are governments banning it? Social media in Iran is carefully controlled. In fact, the Iranian regime tries its best to censor or slow down the internet. But that is not stopping Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from connecting with the Iranian people. His YouTube channel, the Prime Minister's channel, releases short videos with Farsi subtitles aimed at the Iranian people. Netanyahu's approach is very casual and simple. He makes it clear that Israel has no quarrel with Iran's people. It's just the state they have issues with. In the latest video, the Israeli Prime Minister is seen playing with a soccer ball. He then compares the courage of the Iranian national soccer team to the courage shown by demonstrators protesting against the regime in Tehran. Iranians have been engaging in acts of civil disobedience against their regime of late. Its legitimacy and credibility has plummeted. Many protests have been held over the poor economic conditions and shortage of water. For any state, it's an unsavory situation. Israel is only rubbing it in. It's been engaged in a bitter feud with Iran. The Iranian regime says Israel has no right to exist. It's a cancerous tumor, they say, that should be wiped off the map of the world. Of course, the Israelis are upset, and they haven't been holding their punches, calling Tehran the biggest threat to the world. In recent years, Iran has reportedly provided financial aid to Palestinian armed groups such as Hamas and Islamic Jihad. But the Israeli Prime Minister's fight back is unusual. Instead of missiles, he's firing jibes, tweets and videos. The latest ones of YouTube are part of a concerted strategy, we understand, to foment social discontent. Israel aims to build pressure on the Iranian government. Take a look at Prime Minister Netanyahu calling on the world to, quote-unquote, help the Iranian people suffering under an oppressive regime, as he puts it.
This is a tough story, but you need to hear it. Imagine a 15-year-old Iranian girl named Fatemeh. She's smart, and she dreams of starting her own business. Fatemeh wakes up for a run before school. She tries to fill up her water bottle, but this is the water that comes out. Fatemeh starts her run, and she wants to feel the wind in her hair. But when she removes her head covering, religious police threaten to beat her. Fatemeh gets ready for school, but the headmaster of the Hadaf girls' school where she goes tells her that her school is closed. You see, there's too much air pollution. Thousands have died from smog in Tehran. Fatemeh walks to Harandi Park to clear her head, but the park is filled with drug dealers. She stops at her favorite bakery in Aladdin Mall to eat cake yazdi, but there's a nationwide strike. Fatemeh walks past the Parmis high-rise building, and she sees the 20th floor engulfed in flames. Firefighters haven't been able to extinguish the flames for days because they lack the money for proper equipment. Fatemeh is completely exasperated. Why is everything in my country falling apart, she asks. She wants to voice her concerns on social media, but the regime bans Facebook and Twitter. They're terrified that Fatemeh might get access to information that they don't control. Fatemeh needs to relax, so she turns on the TV. The electricity collapses. What are our leaders doing with all our money? Fatemeh asks in despair. She opens the Vataneh Imrouz newspaper, and she finds out. Billions wasted moving Iran's army to Syria. Billions wasted trying to get nuclear in her name. But her story is the real story of millions of Iranians. If you want peace, help Fatemeh. Help the people of Iran to raise their voice against a regime that oppresses them and denies them a life of dignity, prosperity, and respect.
Netanyahu's trolling on the World Wide Web is only one of the many troubles the Iranian regime faces. The country's economic situation is very poor. Iran's currency has plunged to a record low against the dollar. The value of Iran's rial has fallen to a jaw-dropping 100,000 to the US dollar. In other words, $1 US is worth 1 lakh rial. The currency value plunged over America's decision to impose tough sanctions on Iran. An announcement is expected on the 7th of August. The Trump administration is expected to reimpose the first batch of sanctions this month. That will hit Iran's trade in gold and precious metals, graphite, coal, etc. Imports of Iranian carpets and some food items into America will also attract sanctions. This is after American President Donald Trump pulled out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. Washington has also warned other countries against buying Iranian oil. The deadline it has set expires on the 4th of November this year. All this is part of the Trump administration's strategy to step up pressure on Tehran. Iran's rial has lost half of its value since April this year. Add to that a weak economy, growing financial difficulties at local banks, and the high demand for the dollar. Their best hope now is Europe. Iran's European partners, who still support the nuclear deal, by the way, are trying to come up with an economic package. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. India, meanwhile, also has to decide where it stands on this issue. Since the day President Donald Trump announced that he will slap tough sanctions on Tehran, there's been a lot of intrigue over how New Delhi will handle this. Iran is India's third largest supplier of crude oil. Through the investments towards the Chabahar port, India has been able to achieve key trade and strategic objectives. India's relationship with Iran could be at stake if New Delhi decides to toe the American line. It has to make up its own mind on two aspects: the trade and the strategic relationship with Iran. On the trade front, adjustments are being made to create some breathing room if the sanctions indeed restrict India and Iran. India has allowed Iran's bank, Pasargad, to open a branch in the country. The idea behind this is to cut the exposure of Indian banks to Iran. As far as the oil imports are concerned, New Delhi is expected to push for a waiver from Washington. Otherwise, it may need to procure oil from Saudi Arabia or even Iraq, the other two big exporters. India could push the Trump administration on this. It has successfully done the same with Russian defense supplies. America has made an exception for India there. Can the same be achieved with Iran? Illegal immigration is one of the biggest challenges the world faces today. From Canada to Brazil to the United States and the Philippines, every country is struggling to keep up with the increasing number of such immigrants. On Sunday, US President Donald Trump threatened to shut down the government if the Democrats did not support his border wall aimed at curbing the immigration crisis. And today, in a move to send out illegal immigrants, India, under the supervision of its top court, has published a national register of citizens. It's called the NRC. This list includes those who are legal citizens of India. 40 lakh people have not made the cut. They now face the risk of being declared illegal. They will be sent out unless they can prove otherwise. They have less than 2 months to do that. A total of 3.29 crore people had applied for their names to be included in the revised list of Indian citizens. Of these, 2.89 crore have been accepted as Indian citizens. For the rest, that is 40 lakhs, the future is uncertain. So what is the basis of citizenship, you may ask? Who makes the cut? The rule is very simple. Those who can prove that they were living in Assam in India on or before the 21st of March 1971 will be deemed legal citizens of this country. Remember, this was the date when Bangladesh was created. All those who came to Assam after this date will be declared illegal. Now to why this exercise was undertaken. In 1985, the then Rajiv Gandhi government had signed what is called the Assam Accord. It provides for such a citizenship register. It must be maintained. The updation of this register has been long pending. The latest list has been prepared by the Registrar General of India with directions from the country's top court. The government of India has said that there is no reason for the genuine Indian citizens to fear this exercise. Complaints of those who have not made it to the list will be heard. They will be taken up, due process will be followed. No one will be sent to a detention center or arrested or deported immediately based on the draft list that has been released. In short, the government says there is no need to panic. This is just the beginning of a process, they say. But what these 40 lakh people now stare at is the possible loss of freedom, of land rights, and perhaps the loss of their legal status in India. Elections are due there in over a year, and there is no clarity on whether these 40 lakh people will be allowed to vote. They form a big chunk of the state's vote bank, and that should explain the appeasement and the political tug-of-war that is going on over the NRC. And while India debates the situation and how best to deal with illegal immigrants, it's worth noting that the process that is underway here is neither the first of its kind nor unique. Let's look at how countries across the world deal with illegal immigrants, starting with the United States. Illegal immigrants are either arrested by the country's immigration and customs enforcement or by other agencies on its behalf. And this is not a Trump policy. It's been happening over the decades. On arrest, the officials decide whether or not to initiate removal proceedings against the accused. After the initiation of the removal proceedings, an accused has the option of signing a bond that ranges anything between $1,500 to $25,000. This bond allows the accused to return to their native country while the proceedings continue in America. In the United Kingdom, an illegal immigrant faces the risk of arrest, detention or deportation. In addition to this, illegal immigrants struggle to find housing as they're not eligible for government help. The United Arab Emirates, the UAE, has newly introduced a scheme called Protect Yourself via Rectifying Your Status. The scheme was launched in August last year. Under this scheme, visa violators had the option of correcting their legal status by paying a minor fee or voluntarily exiting the country without legal proceedings or fines. Earlier, illegal immigrants were fined, jailed or deported. In Turkey, meanwhile, anyone who has overstayed their visa by more than 10 days are either fined or banned from the country. Illegal immigrant workers are deported immediately. In Saudi Arabia, more than 5.5 lakh illegal immigrants have been arrested as of January this year. All of them have been charged with violation of the residency law by foreign nationals. They face imprisonment until their deportation. Last year, the country had launched a campaign called A Nation Without Violators. The amnesty campaign warned of fines, a jail term, even deportation for anyone caught without valid identity proof after the 4-month grace period. So the world over, this practice is followed. The government of India once again saying that nobody is going to be put in a detention camp. No one will be deported immediately. This is a due process that is being followed and all complaints will be heard. And this is not the last that we've heard of this story. Zimbabwe is voting for a new president today. The country's election commission has reported 90% voter turnout so far, and the voting is still on. Long queues were seen since morning in various parts of the country. This is the first general election in Zimbabwe since long-serving ruler Robert Mugabe was ousted. Almost 5.7 million people in Zimbabwe are registered to vote of a total estimated population of 14 million. After casting his ballot in the central city of Kwekwe, President Emmerson Mnangagwa claimed that the elections are free and fair despite allegations that the government is being run by the military. He said that Zimbabwe is enjoying the democratic space it has never experienced before. Mnangagwa had taken the reins from Robert Mugabe after ousting him from power last year in November. His prime opponent is the MDC's Nelson Chamisa. He also cast his vote in Harare. Chamisa claims that the victory is certain for his party as he enjoys massive support from the young voters of Zimbabwe. Also to vote in this election was former Zimbabwe President Robert Mugabe himself along with his wife Grace. They cast their votes in Harare. Mugabe had earlier said that he will not vote for ZANU-PF, the party he headed for more than 3 decades. There are 23 candidates running for president in that country. Let's take a look at the 2 frontrunners. Ruling party ZANU-PF's Emmerson Mnangagwa. He's known as the crocodile because of its political shrewdness. His party faction is known as Lacoste. He's accused of masterminding attacks on opposition supporters after the 2008 election. He promises to deliver jobs. He's seen as open to economic reforms. He has survived several alleged assassination attempts. The opposition MDC's Nelson Chamisa has seen it all in the run-up to the presidential candidature. His skull was fractured when beaten by state security agents back in 2007. He became an MP at the age of 25, a cabinet minister at 31. He could become the youngest president of Zimbabwe at the age of 40. Chamisa recently qualified as pastor and has been using the hashtag #GodIsInIt for his campaign. He promised to rebuild the country's devastated economy, but has been criticized for making extravagant promises, such as the introduction of a high-speed bullet train and bringing the Olympics to Zimbabwe. The battle lines are drawn. The dice has been cast. Whoever wins this election and becomes the next president will certainly not have an easy run. We'll keep tracking that for you. But talking about countries that are facing such crises, this story comes from Afghanistan. Fields of roses in eastern Afghanistan are providing farmers in Nangarhar a viable alternative to opium cultivation, the sale of which has fueled the conflict ranging across the country. Take a look at this report.
A different crop for Afghanistan's farmers. Opium is big business in the country's WION east, but today so are roses. Mohammedin Sapai once grew poppies, but now pockets more than $1,000 a year in petals after nearly a decade in the business.
They provided us with the plants, the tools, and even paid us for the first year when we had no harvest. Now I have 600 plants, and I collect up to 1,200 kilos of petals.
Afghanistan is the world's top opium producer. The drug is a major source of income for the Taliban, and the total area under cultivation has hit a record high. But this initiative has convinced some farmers in rural Nangarhar to give up poppies.
We have solid contracts with the farmers who grow roses, asking them to stop cultivating poppy and other types of narcotics. And the places where we grow roses are clean from poppy 100%.
Security is a constant concern in the region. 2 years ago, 50 farmers were forced to abandon their rose farms in an Islamic State group hotspot. More than 800 farmers are on board though, from just a few dozen at the beginning, supplying rose water and oil for markets at home and abroad.
We are using roses of Damascus, which contain the best perfume, and they grow very well. Our products have a good market in every corner of the world.
An alternative money-making flower for Afghanistan's farmers, who are waging perfume, not war.